As you heard from the Globe's Stephen Smith last night, there is one man in Massachusetts looking to shake up the political landscape. One man who may decide to challenge the most popular governor in America. That man would be Dan Wolf, founder of Cape Air and retiring state senator from Harwich. Senator, it's good to see you.
Great to see you, Jim.
So
Thanks.
in one short Globe interview, you criticized Baker, your fellow Democrats, the Affordable Care Act, and Deval Patrick. So can we start with Baker? Is that okay with you?
I have a feeling it's going to be lonely in the State House tomorrow.
It may be. So you know that great line from Groucho, there's nothing like good timing, and this is nothing like good timing? So Baker's at 74%. He signs the opioid bill. Every Democrat is falling over themselves, praising him for his wonderful work. They seem to love him. What are they missing from the Dan Wolf perspective about Charlie Baker?
Well, let's separate the politics of the day from the issues of the day. Mm-hmm. And, you know, generationally, Jim, you and I have had discussions about what's happened to poor and working people in the Commonwealth and nationally. And the problem is, if you look at those issues and you look at the data, we keep moving backwards. Since 2010, the lowest 20% has lost 8% in wage and 21% in net worth.
In this state?
Yeah, in this state. Mm-hmm. It's a national figure, but Massachusetts, unfortunately, really conforms with those national trends.
So is it primarily the income inequality thing that you think hasn't been addressed?
I think income inequality isn't being addressed, but I think that reflects itself in a lack of investment in education as it relates to early childhood education, as it relates to higher education, and then as it relates to infrastructure. The MBTA is a perfect example. We are choosing to not invest in long-term infrastructure there. We are choosing to put more fares on the back of the people who depend on it to get to work, those working and poor people that we talked about, and we don't have a long-term vision for the MBTA.
But Senator Wolf, you think we need new taxes to do what the people need. Charlie Baker ran as a no-tax candidate, and the people said, he's the guy we want. So isn't he honoring his pledge to the people?
So Jim, the whole no tax or more tax issue needs to be I think we need to actually make it a slightly more complicated issue. When you look at the way the economy is now structured, with all of the wealth and income going into one place, the graduated income tax ballot initiative, which will be on the ballot in
millionaire's tax,
so-called millionaire's tax, is a step in the right direction. So it isn't a question of more or less tax. It's a question of how we raise revenue to get the job done. Over the last 20 years, we've cut over $3 billion in revenue. And we still want Massachusetts to lead in infrastructure and education and all the other areas. It doesn't work.
As you well know, Charlie Baker could not do one single thing that requires legislative approval unless your fellow Democrats signed off on it. They can veto anything that he vetoes, they could override. Anything he proposes, they could kill. So if Baker is not doing what you think the Commonwealth needs, then your fellow Democrats are letting down the same people, no?
Well, look, I've been asked a lot of times to critique Charlie Baker. My answer to that is, after 8 years with Deval Patrick and an 80% majority in the legislature, if we couldn't get things done during that period to address a lot of the issues that you and I are talking about, it's unfair to beat up on a governor who's been in for 14 months. And I do feel that way. Now, that having been said, there's still a lack of vision in an austerity plan coming from Charlie Baker, which isn't going to work. If you look at those places in Europe that tried to cut their way to prosperity, that isn't going to work, and it's not going to work for the poor and working families in Massachusetts.
Well, but again, none of the Baker austerity plan, as you call it, could be in place were it not for Democrats signing off on that plan. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement.
You're a business guy for Bernie Sanders. This sounds like Bernie Sanders comes to Massachusetts. You're also a single-payer person. You prefer it to the Affordable Care Act. Is it unfair to characterize you the way you talk about a systemic failure of our democracy? So does he. Are you Bernie Sanders in here?
Well, no, I wouldn't say I'm Bernie Sanders here, but there's certainly some overlap. Our political system has disenfranchised the electorate, the voters, the people that depend on a healthy democracy to deliver on all those things that you and I have talked about. And there is a fracture in that. And it's bipartisan, unfortunately. We want bipartisan. Well, we got a bipartisan fracture here. So I think we really need to make a concerted effort to reconnect the voters of the Commonwealth with what's going on in the State House.
I know you're very careful to say to Josh Miller in the Globe, you haven't made a decision about what you're doing. It's far too early. But if things are so bad and you're so committed to public service, why don't you just say it? Say the Democrats in the state need a leader. They're not getting the leadership they need. It seems to be what you're saying from Charlie Baker and your Democratic colleagues. So I'm going to try to lead them out of the wilderness. Why don't you just do it?
My commitment now is to be part of a movement that I think is a national groundswell. And it is impossible to say in 2 years or in a year and a half where that'll be. I will be happy supporting someone else who is a leader. I will be happy carrying signs in the back of the march. So I don't need to be the leader, but I'm certainly open to that if that's the calling.
When are you making that decision?
It'll be at least a year from now. So right now we're focused on the issues and really trying to work with the Democratic Party to, I think, be more effective, and then really understand what it is to deal with a conservative Republican governor and try to be constructive, not simply just making friends.
Charlie Baker being the conservative Republican governor.
Charlie Baker is a conservative Republican governor.
Dan Wolf, it's nice to see you.
Thanks, Jim.
We'll be talking a lot in the future. Senator Dan Wolf.